Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to Sangat TV podcast. My name is Simran. Welcome to our YouTube channel and our Instagram, where we'll be having special guests in our studios. Today we've got Gurpreet Singh, as known as Sikh Dad. Welcome, Gurpreet Singh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thanks for having me.
It's really nice. You've come all the way from London today to come and join us on this podcast. We're super excited.
So am I. I can't wait for us to have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little catch up and it was really interesting about the work you kind of do. And we have so many areas to cover, from mental health, families, so many topics that we covered. So first of all, can you introduce yourself and talk about a little bit about your journey and how you started as Sikh Dad?
So yeah, as you said, my name's Gurpreet Singh, and going straight into, like you said, being known as Sikh Dad is interesting because I was a new dad, and 26 years old. Sounds like a little while ago now, but it's really interesting because I was a new dad and I was looking around for support. And who do I ask questions to? Because obviously our parents, our fathers were different, weren't they? A lot of them were different, and they didn't play that role necessarily. They were obviously the breadwinners, right, going out to work, and we'd see them sometimes when we would see them in the morning, we see them at night, in the evening, right? So our mothers were playing that part a lot. So things were different now, of course, for me. And my wife was saying to me, or my dad was very hands-on. So it's almost like the expectation is set for you in a way that you, and I had a daughter first as well. So it was like, daddy-daughter thing where, you're going to raise her in a certain way. So I felt like there was a lot of things I needed to learn. Obviously, there's things I hadn't done before and things like that. And to be honest, I was quite hard on myself at the beginning because I was like, there was this standard, and I was like, what is this standard I need to get to? Because I don't feel like I'm anywhere near that. And that was where initially I was like, give yourself more credit for the things that you do.
When you said standard, where did that come from?
So I think maybe societal pressure, and also knowing that my father-in-law was a really good dad to his daughters as well.
If we're saying good dad, and you've come from a different background, if you were to describe that good dad, what were those characteristics or what were those values that you're talking about?
So I think just going from what my wife was sharing about what her dad was like was that, he was there for her. He would compliment her. He would validate her. She didn't need attention outside of her dad, which was how she wanted to raise her daughter. She said, well, I've had this upbringing and this is what I want for my daughter, and you almost need to become that, which is interesting because I was like, yo, that sounds great, doesn't it? In theory, but how do I do that at the beginning? So like I said, I learned how to change, bath, feed, all of that kind of stuff, which was all new to me, right? And that was really good because I was learning, right?
Was that something you didn't see in your family then? I'm assuming that your dad role didn't really take on those hands-on skill sets.
It was different because, like I said, he was, I'd see him in the evening because he'd be at work all day. And yeah, it was a different role. But growing up as a boy, I didn't really think about that. But she did growing up as a girl. It's different, isn't it? It's different dynamics. It's not something I ever considered. I didn't even really think about having daughters. I thought about having sons at that age. I didn't even think of so when that came along, it took me down that interesting path. And like I said, Mansima was maybe about 4 or 5 years old, but I was still feeling inside of me that I'm not reaching these standards, whatever these standards are. That maybe perfection that we think exists, isn't it? Yeah. Right out there. And then Gurleen came along, our second child, and that was really different because I was like almost getting another chance, and I got this wave of confidence from somewhere, right? Where I was like so hands-on, and I was like, I can do anything.
Is it almost like you've tried it once and you've kind of had a bit of a practice, and now second time round, I can do it even better now?
I guess so. And I heard this quote recently which really resonated with me, that no child has the same parents because we change, we're ever evolving. So the first child, and then there's, do you see what I mean? As so and so and so forth.
I agree with you. Same with me. I think now you say it, I think about my experience as a mum. My first child is like you're figuring everything else out. Second child, you can kind of forgive something's happening. It's okay if that's not completed. You don't put so much pressure, but you can kind of almost like just relax and let it be.
100%. And I felt that. I felt like all of a sudden I can do anything. I can do absolutely anything. And that's where this came along from, because now I had that feeling. And when I was in the community, people were noticing this and they were saying, oh, you're such a hands-on dad. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. From feeling like I was like not reaching levels, now I'm a hands-on dad all of a sudden. And, I'm walking around with my sort of the baby bag on and things like that. And, in the Gurdwara, for example, I'm like, my wife is sitting in the divan and I'm outside with the kids. And people are like, oh, it's interesting, isn't it? And then I started looking at other things as well. And I started observing that, wow, there seems to be quite a shift here where we're playing a very active role in the lives of our children. And then that's when I thought, this is quite interesting, because I've been wanting to do something for ages. I thought, well, who am I really? And I thought, well, I'm trying to live the life of a Sikh every day, and I'm trying to be a dad, as simple as that, and married the two together. And that's where it went. And first it was like, thinking about misconceptions that people have outside of the community about the way I look, maybe, and the way that they would maybe perceive that I would parent.
What are the misconceptions?
Again, like, you're very strict, you're very religious, your children are going to miss out on all these things. And that was what it was about, that actually, no, my children, even though we try our best to uphold Sikhi, it doesn't mean they miss out on things. We still take them places. They still have fun. They still do what they want to do. And we're a active family. We're on a journey ourselves, and we have experiences. We do all these things. Like one of the things is like I take my children to Disneyland. Looking at me first, you think that's a misconception. He would never take them to Disneyland, right? Just something like that. Something so kind of out.
I think they remove the fact that you're just human, and your identity labels you for not being able to do certain things. And it's like, but that's such a big thing. People do look in that perspective. And I think also there are some people, some families that may look like you that are quite strict, and they would probably be quite strict on that. So they maybe got this one idea, but they see one and they label everything.
We do that, don't we?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's where it kind of all began from. And like where we are today is like, I could never have I never started it like that. And that's I'm always in Shukranna to Guru Sahib for that, because I never started to be like anything anywhere. It was just about sharing what I was doing. It wasn't about because obviously later on Instagram became a place where you're an influencer and you're a blogger and you're like almost like a personality in yourself. I never had that. I never started like that. So I'm always grateful for that, because I always connect with that now. Even now, whatever I do, that was my beginning and my grounding. That all I want to do is this.
Just saying, so going back now, like you worked in the city, you had a normal corporate job, and then all of a sudden, life happened with the kids, and then you had the mindset that actually I want to make a change, or I want to learn something and develop myself, and it was more about parenting than anything else.
Yes, correct. And this is it. As I said, when I started this, I was working in banking, and I had a degree in IT, and I was working in infrastructure. I never thought ever I'm going to shift towards this work at all. But it was getting as you said, corporate. You go in there with that mindset that I want to climb this ladder and I want to get as high as I can, right? And then you realize that, well, again, I had the two girls at the time, and Simmer and Gulleen, and I was like, well, I'm going early in the morning, come back late at night, and we work in the city, both of us. By the time we pick them up, it's like some 9-10 o'clock at night, giving them food, and then we're just in that loop. Okay,
it's really interesting, because what you're saying seems, for me, I think I can speak for a lot of mums, that sounds like mum guilt. But actually it's a dad guilt, and we don't really speak about dad guilt, do we? Because we speak to mums and it's like the first day you dropped your child off, you have that cry and you're like, I'm leaving my child at nursery. And it seems like you're also experience those things which we don't really speak about from the male perspective.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate you saying that, because I've had this conversation with so many people where I've actually spoken about how I feel guilty about certain things, and I've been told to just move on from it and forget about it almost and crack on and not. I don't know. I guess it's foreign to people. We don't consider it. It's not normal. I guess again, mum guilt exists. Dad guilt you've never heard of before, right? I guess we can't. I think the other thing is as well, we can't feel that guilt for too long. We can't sit with that. Yeah. We don't know how to. We want to quickly move on. We want to kind of either suppress it or just kind of put it in a box somewhere, maybe deal with it and just move on from it, and rather than sit with that. So, thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing that up.
No, it's just what you're saying, but it is. And I think we should be really mindful about how we as parents play a role, because again, the mums play a huge role, birthing, pregnancy. There's a massive emphasis on all that. But at the same time, there's another narrative to this relationship, which is the father. And whether it's because they don't have the opportunity or they don't know how to. And I think there's a big, massive gap there. And it's like, how can they? Because they don't know, because they haven't seen it. And again, as you said, you weren't shown that role of validation or being there for your daughters, but your wife had told you, this is what I need from you. So therefore, you made that commitment. You went out your way to actually search and work hard to do that. It wasn't just that I can't be bothered, because I think a lot of people would probably say, you know what, just go with it. This is who I am. And so therefore, this is how I'm going to do it. But you've gone to the lengths of saying, actually, I want to be a better person. I want to go and take those steps, and you've actioned those. And that's hard work, especially when the human beings are in this world today, but you're still trying to make that yourself that one better. And I know there's a lot of people that are stuck in their ways, and they think that I'm not going to even change a nappy, let alone, dropping the kids off or whatever it is.
Yes, I totally agree. And like when you said about the guilt, I think it's really interesting to just point out that if you have that mum guilt or if you have that dad guilt, it's okay, because that shows the love. Without it, because we all want to do more, don't we? Yeah. Right? But without that guilt, there's no love. Like the care, isn't it? It's care, isn't it? Yeah. So without that, so it's important to acknowledge that you have enough of it, that you feel the care, but it's not too much that it's overbearing, and then it becomes criticism and judgment and all of that it goes to a negative place. I always say keep a little bit of it. It's like our Sikh, isn't it? If we don't have a bit of guilt with that to say, well, I should be doing a little bit more, shouldn't I really? Where is the want to do more? Where is the love and the care? Otherwise we wouldn't care, would we? Yeah. Like you said, we'd say, I'm stuck in my ways. I'm not changing. I'm not going out of my way to do this for my children. We would say that, wouldn't we? But no, we don't say that. We have that, well, I should be doing more because I actually care about this.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, because the balance is a tricky part, like you said, not giving them too much, but you want to give them just enough, but at the same time holding back as well, because you need them to be resilient. You need them to not always, they need to find that space themselves as well. You want to raise these kids up so they can look in the mirror and be like, actually, I don't need to depend on my father or my mother. I'm actually, a strong human being. The love is always going to be important, because that's what shapes them. How do you navigate that?
And that's interesting you use the word balance, because I don't think that word exists. Because it's always a level we're always trying to reach that level, aren't we? Yeah. Where the work-life balance as well, and like you said, balance between giving them everything but making them grateful as well at the same time. The balance between being there for them but then allowing them to be resilient as well. And that's one you've got to feel, and that's one, again, like you said, you experience, don't you, as you go through and learn from. But I think like when you have experiences like gratitude or ungratefulness, or you have the one where do I step in or do I allow them to grow and be resilient, they're always things that we should not wait for the next thing to happen. Maybe look at some things that have happened and observe how have we been in those situations. What did we learn from them, and how do we? Yeah, 100%. And have the belief though that actually I'm there. I know them, right? And this is interesting because we can go into doubt as well, but we know our children, isn't it? Like you know your children. I know my children. And even if we had a discussion about something, you'd go away and you go, actually, I know them. But sometimes that can be like a bit of a mirage, isn't it? It gets like blurry and we think, oh, we need to do this, this, and this. But actually, we got to harness that we know our children and they are our children as well. And that, we know deep down, and that's what it's that intuition, what it says, that we know what's right for them, isn't it?
You're so right. I'm laughing because something came up into my head while he's speaking to me about that balance, and we need to reflect on stuff. Like yesterday, something happened with my little one, and she got caught. A bit of clear nail polish. Oh, she's going to kill me if I put this out there. And
no names mentioned.
No. But I remember being a kid, and I remember doing this and sneaking into my boy's room and trying her lipstick out, and it's like those little things. There's things that you need to let them embrace as children, and you got to tell them that it's not right. And then after I told her that, she got a little bit upset. Then I made her laugh, and I go, do you want to know something? And I showed her what I did as a daughter, and I said, look, we are going to make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. And there's this thing where we want an ideal perfect, and I had a reflection myself in that moment, and I thought, I want my children to be perfect and they can't make mistakes. Actually, in fact, they need to make those mistakes, because how are they going to learn? And it really made me think about, like, you got to have that conversation. It's like, what made you do that? Why did you do that? And it's okay to cry. You say all those things, and give me a hug. She didn't want a hug. I was like, okay, that's fine. When you're ready, you can come and have a hug. But you reflect and you think, we were once children too. So just remember that these are just kids as well, because I know that there's some people that just want a perfect kid, and it's like, you've got to be realistic. The kids have to trip up, because how else are they going to learn?
100%. And I think what I loved about what you shared there reminded me of something that, when we were growing up, very rarely would our parents talk about things that they did when they were young, like where they messed up or whatever it was, because I guess obviously they were here in fight or flight mode trying to build lives for us, is a reality, isn't it? Where they didn't have that opportunity to be vulnerable in front of us, to say, actually, when I was growing up, I did this and I messed up like you're doing now. Because so we kind of, I definitely went away with this thing of perfection, that we need to be perfect growing up. Whereas maybe that's maybe something what you're kind of talking about there as well with that. But again, that doesn't exist, that perfection. And that perfection is what leads to burnout and stress, because we're trying to reach for this level of perfection across the board with everything we do. And we've confused that with having high standards. Yeah. It's okay to have high standards, right? It's okay to want good things for your family. It's okay to have a good career. It's okay to grow in your spirituality, grow in your Sikh. You have high standards. It's fine, isn't it? It's nothing wrong with that. But then where do we go from there to perfection? It's something that we need to look at.
And I think I think the bit that I was reflecting and laughing about is like how we were trying to have that balance, and it's actually, like you said, sharing those stories. And I think we should embrace that more, that we are human, and connect with the children, because at that moment I saw myself in her, and I saw myself as that little young child, and I thought, you know what was I feeling at that time, and why did I do that? It was because we were curious, and children are curious. If you can allow them to be curious and make those mistakes, in moderation, I guess. It's just embracing their bringing. And I said, yeah, we are going to make mistakes. It's fine, but let's try and reflect on this. I think there are tools, and I think a part of that has also come because I'm very interested in kind of parenthood as well. And I don't think that would come naturally to a lot of people either. So for me to pause and not go, why did you go and do that? I could have gone that way, but I really thought about, actually, it's not going to get her anywhere. Yes.
I think you said some really important words. You said embrace, which is really something we have to experience, don't we? We have to be in the moment to embrace, actually, what is it I see in front of me right now, right? Not what has happened to me as a child, not what I'm scared about in the future is going to happen, right? What is going on in the moment? Where are we now in the real time with it? And I think the other thing is really important that you said is that, you know, I've seen it as well in many families and with the work I do, that when a parent calls a child out, okay, imagine we get called out as adults. You've done that. What's our natural response? We're like, we're not going to go, open up, are we? We're going to go, actually, this isn't safe for me to say anything. I'm just going to be quiet, or I'm going to avoid it, or whatever it is. If we're so direct with the kids and go, look, you've done that, haven't you? And like you said, go a bit high rate maybe, or however it is. How do we ever expect to connect with them? So you connected through that story, for example, that experience, you embraced that moment and built the connection. Because what happens is then we say, oh, they don't talk to us. They don't confide in us. They don't do this, because there's never been that opportunity where you connected over something that was really small and everyday, right?
It is. It's choices we make, and I think it's reaction. The reactions that we have to unlearn those reactions. And a little bit more about you. So we move on from my little story, my little one. So the work that you do with families and the support that you do, you know, is phenomenal. You've come to Birmingham this weekend, and you're just sharing with me that you work with 3 families in Birmingham. So what is that work, and what is it that you are helping parents do?
So ultimately, fast forwarding, so I was, like I said, my career was in banking, right? And then I was blogging, talking about stuff online, about parenting, mental health as well was massive. That was like, oh my God, how is this going on now? How does this exist? How is this happening in people's families? Learning about all of that, to the point that then my career changed. And then I went into mental health. So I worked in primary mental health care for 5 years. And then beyond that, I was still doing the parenting work, you know, through lockdown. My wife and I, Navrupkor, we were doing the Sikh parenting membership. So we had calls every week with parents during lockdown. And then that's where that built for me. And I was like, well, okay, now I've got lots of experience throughout the years from the community, working within family issues, social issues, having the trust of Sangat to help with certain situations. I've been talking about parenting online for so long. Now it just seems a natural way to be qualified in this. So I become certified as a family coach. And what that means is ultimately working with relationships. Okay, so everything is a relationship, right? So whether it's a mother and a son or daughter, father, son or daughter, husband, wife, beyond that, what relationships we have in our life is a relationship. So working on those relationships, working on parenting, working on any social issues like bullying, addictions, it's whatever's presented to me, I feel that I can work towards and align towards. And like you said, it's happened organically that, you know, I'm working with families that are from a Punjabi Sikh background because I'm relatable to them and they're relatable to me, vice versa.
And in context of Punjabi families, your Amritdhari and the families that you work with, are they all both sort of non-Amritdhari and Amritdhari families?
It's a total mix. So some are following Sikhi, some are wanting to follow Sikhi, some are at very early stages. But for me, it's just dealing with certain nuances that are in Punjabi culture.
Well, label the maybe top 3 nuances that you deal with on a daily basis, or.
I think just categorizing it, it's a case of, you know, like where you work with somebody who just understands you. Yeah. So just like you shared something there before about your child, it's an understanding, because we would have had a very different reaction when we were children to that with our parents. And it's understanding that, right? And it's almost like not, I know there could be top 3, top 5, or top 10, but what I've found is that just when you understand someone, like I'm here talking to you, you understand me totally, right? So you won't even sometimes need to administer any advice. Maybe you would just nod your head because you get it, right? and that is the biggest, almost like the hosla hunda, like where somebody just gets someone else without having to explain too much and drag everything out. And it's knowing that, so that relatability, that I get you. Like maybe, I don't know, you've had something where you were growing up and, you know, through marriage or whatever, you had some challenges, right, in culturally. So for example, you know, marriage would be, certain things are that Western culture would be that, okay, we're going our separate ways now. But no, in Sikhi, we've had a Nandgarage. This is what this means. Yeah, this is how it's different from a Western marriage, right? And tackling those things to make somebody understand that this is different to that, and that we don't just walk away from that. We try everything we can to work on it, right? And that's what that is, working on that.
It's interesting you're mentioning marriage and an undercarriage. That's another topic I think we're going to come back to.
It's the very foundations of parenting, right? Marriage.
It is a foundation of marriage, but I think when we open up that can of worms about the undercarriage and what it means and how we are raising our kids, I think with your work, and maybe I could be wrong, you can correct me here if I am wrong, they may have not taken the context of an undercarriage as part of the relationship part, and I think that's a massive absent, a big absent part of a relationship, and it's a big absent part of a family unit as well, taking that commitment.
But it's setting people free as well, and taking the shackles off and saying to them, you can do it now. Yeah, you can do it now, right? And that's with parenting as well, right? Because we can ask ourselves these questions that when we were growing up, what kind of a parent did we want to be? We didn't even probably consider that, right? What kind of marriage did we want? We probably didn't even consider that. But we can start to consider it today. What kind of marriage do I want from today? What kind of parent do I want to be from today? There can be a change. We must, be able to feel that.
You know, it's really interesting. You know, when you think about marriage and you think about rishte, people are looking for the right one for their kids or whatever it is, you know. There's these parents, you know, I'm at that age now where people come to me and say, do you know so-and-so for this person? Do you know so-and-so for this person? And I'm like, I could name you maybe 5 on my hand. However, it's not about whether that height is the right or whether they don't eat meat or whether they do this and that. I mean, those are really important things. But actually, what are your values? What are your values? Where do you see your life in 5 years with that person? What are your goals? I mean, these aren't discussions that happen. Those are probably the most fundamental conversations you should be having before you make that commitment. And actually, the topic around an undercarriage and marriage, why are these conversations not happening?
I think, I think why they're not happening because they're difficult conversations to have. Whereas if you say, height and, dietary requirements and, certain goals or financials or what career or right, they're quite easy things to settle on, isn't it? Okay, so a suitable match, baron. But to have difficult conversations like you're saying, to actually unpick things earlier on, is people are not so keen to do that because it's difficult. They're hard conversations to have. But would you rather have those conversations before or a few years down the line when it becomes harder to have those conversations because you're actually living in it? It's a question we need to ask ourselves.
The more I talk to people about relationships, the more I talk to people about in the community, and even I've heard like horrendous stories where they say that and it's so toxic, and it's like you're relying on a new person to fix your child that you've known your whole life that you couldn't fix, and you're relying on someone else now to take that burden per se to fix the situation, and then they have to raise a family on top of that. But yet this problem that's existing is all in this relationship.
And you mentioned the word toxic, so the toxicity in certain families exists from many years, isn't it? But when the marriage happens, it's almost like, okay, it's all come to the surface even more. So all of that responsibility is for those individuals from all the past as well. And like you said, there's that hope and that almost like it sounds like insanity, isn't it, to say everything's going to be fixed just by this. Temporarily, maybe, but then people will go back into their old patterns and themes will show up, of course. They will come up. And then you're saying to, almost looking at the individual, saying, oh, you were meant to marry them and fix all that. And then you're stuck with that ideation, aren't you? And you can't get away from it. And like you said, when you look at it in logic, it makes no sense, does it? But as a community, we still culturally like this. Unfortunately, it's still out there, isn't it?
I think it's really sad for those people that have to be put through that situation, and not just for the person that's got to take that responsibility to take care of that person, but it's not fair on that person because they haven't had an opportunity or the means or the support to fix themselves first, to know who they are. If you don't know who you are, how do you know what you're going to be to the other person sitting in front of you?
Absolutely. And that is something that we're all still discovering. I certainly am now, still figuring myself out now.
But there's this level of sanity and there's a level of responsibility, and you understand what that commitment meant.
I agree, but it has to, it's a difficult one because, we can, support can be there, of course it can, but then, the individual needs to know that they can take that support, and change going into that topic is very difficult, right? Because if somebody is a certain way, okay, even if they want to change, how do they do it first, right? And how do they almost become something else that they don't know? Whatever they are, right, they know what every day looks like, okay? And becoming something else is scary to them and unknown. So while that, we can even look at someone and go, you need to change. Of course you need to change. Look at X, Y, and Z is going on. It's just not acceptable, right? And they get it, right? But then how do they then do that? It's very difficult. It's the hardest thing to do.
I guess that's where you come in, is the how. So you give your families the tools of how. And I'm taking it, you're giving them micro things to work on as they go along.
That's it. This is it. This is a journey. So ultimately, where are you? Okay. And where do you want to get to?
Do you ever find that when you speak to partners that they're on completely different pages and they didn't even know it? And do they reveal a discovery of themselves when with each other? Like, I didn't know that about you. Or I didn't know that about you. Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, because we're just in the chaos of daily life, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Where we're just, this is communication is really interesting. Like me and Navrubka, we joke about it all the time, because I always say to her, sometimes it feels like I'm giving you a news flash about what's going on in life, because you just don't get the time, do you? But we need to take whatever time out that we can to communicate, because the reality is, for the majority of people, there was love there was friendship, companionship, there was Sangat in the beginning, right? So it's about connecting back to that, keeping that alive as you go along through everything else. And yes, we can get busy in so many different areas, but we might not notice those small things, like you say, everyday things that keep us nourished, don't they? Like keep it fresh, and keep it okay, we're going somewhere together.
Yeah. And then if you're not together, when you've got the kids in the mix of it, then how are you supposed to support your children in that? And as you said, having daughters yourself, having the tools for that to be able to give them that support. And if you haven't got your story right between the two of you, how are you going to give that story or that model of comfort or safety, security, whatever it is that you need to be? How can you give that in a loving environment if it's not there existing between the two of you in the first place?
And they will see that. And from a very young age, you will know, being a parent, they see everything.
It's not just see it, they feel it.
Exactly, they feel it. Yeah, they you can't kid a kid, really, you can't. But what you're saying is, if we are to be the best version that we can be, or at least we're trying, we're on the path to it, then they've got a better chance. They've got the best chance. Okay, if you can evolve yourself, there's no guarantee. Okay, of course, there's no guarantee for any of us, but there's a better chance, isn't there? And we want to give them the best chance, don't we? Of course we want to. But then again, that comes with us as well. That what are we? And it's such a short time period, isn't it? Of the early years to then teenagers to adulthood.
It goes so fast.
Yes, it does.
You know, when they used to say to you, time's gonna fly, you don't realize until like they're already like in school, and the kids are like, you know, and I think a way to measure how you're doing in terms of relationship is like, what were you like when your kids were born, and what were you like now? And it's like, has there been a change, or are you still doing the same stuff? Is there progression? And it's like, if you're in the same place, are you working on what you need to work on?
Uh, and that is again, that's a self-reflection, isn't it? That we must have. But you know, like you say that the days are long and the years are short. When it comes to parenting, the days feel so long, don't they? Like sometimes it's like, what time at night, and you're like preparing for the next day, aren't you? And you're like, and this day feels like forever, but the years are short, aren't they? But that's a real good checkpoint for anyone listening to this that you just gave, right? Where was I before, and where am I now? And do I still feel like I'm doing the same things? Like, do I still feel like I'm in a bit of a Groundhog Day? And am I in a loop, which is it, isn't it? It's a loop that we're stuck in, okay? And then do I want something else? And how do I begin to work towards that change and breaking that loop? Because I can do it, right? But again, it's not easy. It's breaking that loop somehow, however that is. And what I always say is that if you can, it sounds like a cliche because we always say self-care, take some time out for yourself as a parent, right? Of course. And you're sitting there and you're like, I need to take time out for myself. And you're looking around the house, aren't you?
You got 110 things to do.
Exactly. And you're like, what I plan to do, is it as effective as this, right? Or if I go away and do this, I'm still going to come back and the work is going to be double, okay? Right? So what I always say is, and I've started to practice this myself as well now, where you take an hour out of your day, okay, or however long you can take, even if you can't take an hour, take out half an hour, whatever it is, but you take that time out for you, okay? That time belongs to you, okay? Because we're living in a time now where not much belongs to us, let's be honest about it. But if we can own that time of 1 hour, okay, and we can do something in that hour just for us, okay, whether that's exercising, whether that's journaling, whether that's drawing, whether that's whatever you want to do.
What do you do now?
So I've got certain habits that I do. Okay, so I practice gratitude. I might exercise. I might read the Hukamnama from Darbar Sahib, or take my supplements, or whatever it is that I do. Like I might journal something. I might make a video. I might I don't know, do anything that I've got a list of things that basically like nourish me, and I'll go through that list.
Oh, I like that. And is that a specific time in the day, or is that just as and when you get time?
You think, okay, you've got a set time, okay, and that's a great hour, isn't it? Sometimes when you can do that in your set time and do everything you want to do, okay. But let's say life happens, and you have a late night, things happen in the morning, and you don't get that same time, okay. What do you do then? Okay, then you have to reschedule it later on in that. And it might not be the same hour that you have had yesterday, but you still do it. You still tick those things off, because what you're doing is, if we're taking care of ourselves, if we're looking at a plant, right, we need to give it light, we need to give it water, we need to plant those seeds, don't we? Okay, those seeds compound over time. So if I said to you, Banji, I said, take an hour out a day, okay, which is 30 hours in a month. 31 hours in a month. But if I said to you, Banji, take 4 days off work, a 4-day week off, 28 hours, you say, Banji, I can't do that. You must be crazy.
That's so good the way you put that.
That's the way I thought about it. I can't do that. I can never do that. I'm always thinking, when can I take 1 day off, like a self-care day? I can't do it.
All right. So 30 hours is 4 days of work.
Yeah, roughly 28 hours, isn't it?
1 hour a day. That's brilliant. I like that. I'm going to have to write that one down.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where we can, and you know what? That's just for us. That's momentum, right? And that will build, okay? And when I speak to people about it, okay, they become better parents, better partners, better friends, better Sangat members, better everything. They're more enthused just through that, just through taking that time out.
And that's just you sitting with yourself, isn't it? That's just you being you and being present, because we don't give ourselves that time. Who was I talking to? I can't remember, but I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking about how well-being is so important. Or was it you, Baji? I can't remember now. But we were talking about how we put everyone else first, but we don't put ourselves first. And if we're not, and it seems like a really selfish thing to do, and we feel so guilty. And the minute you put yourself first, you think, oh my God, I feel so. And for those people that need to take this step, and you're saying take an hour, they're going to face these guilts. They're going to feel like I should be doing something else for someone else. But it's so important to start understanding actually those little things for yourself is important as well.
They're normal though. They're normal things to feel at the beginning, because it feels like, because we're setting boundaries, aren't we? And boundaries are uncomfortable at the beginning, aren't they? Because we've never set them before. So it's going to feel strange. It's going to feel uncomfortable. But then what it is when you actually, like you said, embraced it, didn't you? When you feel it and go, actually, when I have this time for me, I am like this. Yeah. And when I don't have this time, then I'm like this. It's not almost night and day that you can see it. And we're saying like, and you know, sometimes one really big thing is that, you know, like, let's say Monday to Friday, okay, we're in our work routine, okay, then we can practice this time comfortably, let's say, in our work routine. Weekend happens, okay, we're around the kids, right? And holidays happen, don't they? Of course, like we're half term at the moment, right? How do you manage that then? What I would say is then you have one or two things that are not negotiable that you do in a day, whatever they are. It may not accumulate to an hour, but it might be a few minutes of things that you do that are like, they have to happen, one or two things. And that, again, that just keeps it going, right? So have those things that you might not be able to do everything you do. I don't know, you've got about 10, 15 habits you do a day. You might not be able to do them, but you can do one or two things. Okay, because what happens is then you feel like, oh, I do all this in the week. I started feeling like that. I was like, I'm doing so much in the week, and the weekend is coming, and I'm around with the kids and holidays. I can't. Then it felt counterproductive to me, and I'm like, I shouldn't be feeling like this.
And the last thing you want to do is feel demotivated because you haven't ticked your goals. And I think that's a trap itself, isn't it? That's a trap, because we have these goals which are supposed to be good, but actually they can have the opposite effect. If you're not ticking those, then you're going to have this scrutinizing feeling of like, I didn't do what I need to do. How do I now figure it out? But I think we have to be forgiving and learning how to be adaptable, and it's okay. You will pick that up again. And even if you don't tick one or two things off, the kids are going to be back at school. We'll pick up then, and just be present in the moment where you can be.
This is exactly it, because the last thing you want to do is be in the moment with the kids and you're thinking about like that.
There's no point, then you're not enjoying life, are you?
Exactly, yeah. But again, sometimes we need to go through that to understand that actually, you know what, this is not how I should be here. I should be present with them as much as I can. So therefore, like you said, you either give yourself a couple of days off, a few cheat days, and go, I'll start again on Monday, right?
Let's not talk about cheat days.
Or you say, I'll do one or two things and just keep it going. Momentum is the most important thing out of this.
And I think the kids see those habits as well. It's what they see, it's not what you say as well.
You know what? If one of your habits is going for a short walk, take them with you if you can. Definitely. Right? And you know what? Even family habits, okay, right? They shouldn't, you know, like, again, when I speak with families, everyone's already very stressed. There's time constraints. They're in the being and doing of parenting all day long. So it's not about overcomplicating things and saying you should do this and making it even harder for them. That's not what we should do. We should simplify things. So the things that we already do, okay, like obviously we eat, we sleep, right? We go out, and whatever it is that we do, okay. Whatever our family routine is, everyone's got different family routines, little family things they do, okay. Whatever you do, include that stuff in there.
You know, it's so true. I think we've been doing this since lockdown. It's like our park has been our best friend. We've got a massive park from where I live, and we've had birthday picnics in that park. We've had all sorts going on, and every time the holidays come, we're like, it's a nice day, even if it's a bit windy or rainy, we're like, let's go for a walk. And me and my husband get to talk. The kids are on their bikes or whatever, off running, they're free. And I think that's the easiest and most simple and most cost effective quality time you can have with your family. And I don't think we take that as enough. I mean, that's just a simple example of having that quality you time, because it doesn't have to be just you time. It could be us time. And there's this culture about, dates, family dates, date nights go on. But sometimes that's not possible or feasible or affordable for everyone. Just going for a walk with the kids, you've had a bit of fresh air and.
This is it. Like you said, include everything in what you already do. Don't make it harder for yourself by thinking, I need to do that, and that on top of everything else, because you're not going to do it. And then you're going to be critical of yourself for not doing it. So what you do already, you will know what you do already and go, how can I include this here? Right? So let's say we want to be, practice presence, we want to practice hazardity, we want to practice mindfulness. Okay, let's do that while we eat a little bit for a few minutes. While everyone's going to eat, aren't they already? Let's have a little conversation around the dinner table about how we can connect better, or whatever it is, the things we do. Like, let's not make it too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Little bits are better, and adapting it part of what you're doing already than making these super hard over ambitious goals. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, and we've all learned the hard way, haven't we?
We've all been, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Come January, New Year's resolution, we've all got that massive long checklist we're going to do, and come day 5 is like, I can't be bothered, forget that.
It's so true. We get overwhelmed by it, and we put it down. Because we're like, it's too much.
I want to go back to your parent and your daughter role model thing, and I just want to kind of I think it's a nice topic to have, because we're thinking about the world out there being scary, the expectations and standards that are put out on our fingertips now and accessible to them. How do you, as a father, embrace change in your young children, daughters specifically, and how important is your role, and what kind of things do you do to build confidence in them?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and we're saying that they grow up very quickly, don't they? And how you see them as young and how they're getting older, it's like you said, parent guilt before. There's also, strange enough to say it, it's like grief, because you're like, they're never going to be that again. Because I know that I definitely feel it. I'm sure you have felt it over time, when there's certain moments where you're like, can we just freeze frame here for a little while? Because you're like, do you see what I mean? 100%. Like there's some moments, and then I
tend to say to my kids, I'm like, please don't grow up. I'm just like, just stay the way you are. They're like, what do you mean, mummy? I go, you're just my babies. I go, you're always going to be my babies.
And we understand now when our parents still talk to us, and so I get it 100% now. I didn't understand it before, but I get it now. We're always going to be like that. They're always going to be our babies, right? But we can't baby them forever, right? Of course, we know that, right? So what you're saying is that, like, I felt that, and that's my work to do, because it's letting go, right? It's a form of letting go. So like, as they get older, and that's the hardest thing, that you do so much for them, but ultimately they're going to live a life without you in a way, right? Because they're going to be individuals, aren't they? And as they're growing up, they're building their presence, they're building their personality, they're building their character. Okay, and fast forwarding from as they're growing up as youngsters to teenagers, okay, because that's where even maybe going to secondary school, let's say, that's where a lot of the challenges start to come, right? Where they're not children anymore, okay, and obviously there's technology out there. We all know about that, and what the relationships are with that. Then they're growing. So especially you mentioned a daughter. So a daughter is becoming a young woman, okay? And, from being like a princess, daddy's little princess, okay, to now, becoming a young woman, and changing. So monthly cycles coming in to play, hormones.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you said it than me.
So, with that, like, that was another thing that when I spoke with Navrupko in the beginning, and she said, my dad was understanding of that 100%. So she said, you need to know about that stuff immediately, You need to know about it. So I was like, okay, well, what can I know about that? And again, that is coming out of your comfort zone, because that was foreign to me. I know nothing about it.
So there's fathers out there who might be watching this or might be listening to this. If there was some advice you could give them about this, because they're going to be from a background, they may not have a wife that may encourage them to have this conversation, or might find it very uncomfortable and very much shush shush, because it is a conversation that's quite, in some households you don't speak about it, you don't leave monthly cycle products in your bathroom, out in the open. Everything is very hush hush. Like, how can you what advice would you give those parents that might want to be like, if that father is left with their daughter and the mother's not there to deal with it, how would they deal with it? How, or not even just that scenario, but other situations of them growing up, because it is awkward. It's an uncomfortable situation, because number one, it's a male talking to a female daughter, and then it's like, how can we talk comfortably and respectfully? What tools can you give those dads?
Well, I think it's really important that we have this conversation. One thing is, all the information is out there for us now, so there's no excuse to not know things, right? Everything is out there at our fingertips, so we can learn about things online. Of course we can, right? But I think what you see in front of you is very important. Okay, your child. Okay, and we can very quickly get in our own head. I certainly was, about my daughter growing up quickly and making it about me, because I'm like, she was my little girl and now she's a woman, now she's like this and that. It's all overthinking right, immediately. And she's still your little child in front of you. Yeah. And what is it that she needs is really important. So we have to sacrifice that. We have to go through a bit of pain ourselves to, put ourselves on the back foot. Yeah. And actually look what's in front of us and what is needed. So all that they want is to be understood, right? To understand them.
I love that.
And feel.
Yeah.
Right? Allow them to feel what they feel. Right, and try and understand them. That will validate them in themselves. But that reassurance is a big one. They need to be reassured that what is going on for them is natural.
And it's not just the mum's voice, is it? I think the point of, like, the father having that role.
Yes, it has to. That has to be joined up. It has to be, because they should be able to go to either of you. The son should be able to go to either of you as well. But they need reassuring, and you need reassuring yourself as a parent. The dad needs to be reassured that this is totally natural, what is happening to their child. Okay. And yes, of course, like, one thing that I always say is that, the daughter especially, like, she'll dote on, like, the dads will give the stories, isn't it? Like, this used to happen, and they just sit there, and then all of a sudden, like, I noticed there was a change, like, all of a sudden, like, because what I couldn't handle was like
oh yeah.
And eye rolls, right?
Oh
okay,
God,
I couldn't handle that, and almost like we're ready to go, and like, clothes is an important one, because again, the children are growing up, clothes don't fit them anymore, and they don't feel confident in certain clothes as well. Even that conversation.
Can I just go back to how do you deal with the huffs and puffs? Because oh my God.
Yeah. And this is it. You know what it is? At first, there was raised voices. Don't disrespect me. Don't do this. Don't do that. And then you realize that actually that's pushing them further away. And that, when you're, again, punishments as well for behavior like that, right, is that, I'm taking this away from you, I'm doing that. And they don't understand why you're doing that. They don't get it. And neither do you understand why you're doing that. You're just trying to hurt them.
Yeah, it's almost become like tit for tat, isn't it? It's like, well, you did that, so therefore this is the consequence. But actually, you're not getting to the bottom of what the problem is or why they did that in the first place.
And one of the biggest things is there's distance starts to grow. Yeah, when this stuff starts to happen.
Part, isn't it?
Yeah, and mums have said to me, look, the dad is at loggerheads with the daughter. All they do is argue. Once they used to get on great. Now all they do is argue, right? And that's a really difficult, because anything can set it off, right? But then the dad has to be the one where they, go more of the way, okay, in the relationship. They have to change their approach. We have to adapt. Like I said, try to understand them, try to reassure them, and then you'll find that, like you said, the small things that they'll bring out little glimmers, and you're like, she's still my child. Like, she'll say, whatever. But things can escalate really quickly. And the danger is, we know that, what the dangers are out there, that, if the daughter doesn't feel validated from the dad, doesn't feel reassured, doesn't feel loved, doesn't feel all those things, she'll look for that elsewhere. And that's the danger. She'll look for that elsewhere. Naturally, it will happen. She'll look for the attention.
And I think in the world we're living in now, I think that's a scary thing. And I think there needs to be a bit of a push about how we can embrace change, how we can move around. And I don't think it's asking for the children to adapt. We have to adapt ourselves around what's going on. I mean, I'm dreading it. My kids are primary school, and in about a year's time,
they're in a safe haven of primary school.
So my one's gone to secondary school first year, and my second one is got one more year left at primary. And there's already things happening, but I am sitting back and I'm thinking, scenarios happen. However, I do think about it and I reflect, and I think, if that was to happen again, how could I deal with it next time and not repeat that pattern and ensure that we have a positive outcome? What am I doing wrong? That's what it comes to as well. What have I done as a parent? Why did I deserve? How do I deserve this? Why are you doing this to me? I think these are common things. I think a lot of parents out there will probably say, I agree, that's what I do. Like, I've given them everything, they've got everything, but why have they done X, Y, and Z? These are so the typical, what's the word? Questions we have.
Yeah, common, yeah. Very common, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are. And, again, it's normalizing that as well. The more we can speak to, like we're speaking today, the more we speak with other people, right? And we have that strength in community, that these are all our children. Yeah, your children are like my children. Yeah, there's no gatani like that there's no difference. There shouldn't be that competition. I should want your family to do well. You should want my family to do well. There should be that strength there. There's not that lack mindset. We should be in shukranna that everybody, Guru Sahib blesses everybody like that, and that we should have these conversations. But, like you mentioned, even like at topical times, it's important for us to be there where, okay, so what's the transition from primary school to secondary school? It's huge. That we're there for them in that moment. That, not that, necessarily we're probing, okay, but they know that we're there. Okay, one of the biggest things is where people normally say, somebody needs support, and that could be anybody. How do I support them if they're not talking to me about it? Okay, ultimately, it's about them feeling that you're there for them, and you offering that if you need to speak to me, if you need this, if you need that, I'm here.
I think the more we say that, the more they know you're there. I think sometimes we just say it once and then they think, I've done my bit. But actually, it's okay to keep checking in on that person and just be like, you might need a bit of a space, but you can come back to them and say, are you okay? How are you doing? How can I support you? Just keep going back to those kind of, they might not come to you, but if you still let them know that I'm still here. I think we don't do that enough.
You're right. Because, again, like you said, we think, I've already asked them once, but we find, and I'm sure you find this, maybe it's 2 or 3 days later they'll come to us and say, this happened 3-4 days ago. But one thing that is definitely something I learned is that when you ask open-ended questions, you're conversational about things. Things will come out in those conversations. Rather than be direct about it, if you're constantly conversational about certain things, they will say, you know what, this happened. Yeah. And that's almost like it's a win moment. You like feel like it's a light bulb goes off and you're like, like they're going to tell me something which is important, because you have those regular check-ins. And you know what? That's when I found that the dad stories actually mean something, because they're coming to you with something. So you're not just giving one of your lectures, they're like, oh, Dad's one of his stories again. Like, it's actually topical because they're like, they want to know what happened to you in school. And you can say, oh, that happened to me as well. And in a certain way that it doesn't take away from their experience, but they get that you get them.
You know what? You're right. And I use my childhood, my stories, because I know my kids are going to face similar challenges because a lot hasn't changed. Even though we may think a lot has changed in schools, in terms of our culture and our faith, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of education and the challenges that we face in schools today. But one of the things I always say is like, yeah, we experienced this, and you know, what happened in your day? And I was like, oh my God, you know, and then you reflect and you have those conversations with them. One thing that you do work with, and we're talking about parents and fatherhood, you work with mental health communities out there, and I take it that's parenting as well, and all of that comes part of that.
Yes, that, and men specifically, and families as well, and the challenges that come with that. Of course, it is so important because, you know, if we're not working on that and working through those challenges, which can be difficult, okay, because sometimes we can't deal with these things on our own, right? But it's a scary part. I had an episode of low mood as well over a few months, okay, probably maybe about 10, 12 years ago now. And I remember what I was like. I was terrified, right? And I was like, who do I talk to about this?
Were your kids around then? Or?
I had one, only Mansima was around then, okay? She knew something was up. She was probably about 4 or 5 years old. She could tell that I wasn't myself, 100%, right? And I didn't know what the hell was going on with me, I'll be honest with you, right? And I was like, everything was internalized, right? And it felt like the world was just going on. And I was like, something has changed in me. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. All of a sudden, I didn't want to do anything. I couldn't sleep properly at night. I was irritated. All of these things. It's like I'd literally changed, yeah? And I couldn't work it out, right? So things can really quickly escalate for someone, right? I didn't know. Now I know it was low mood, but at the time, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I knew something had changed, right? And I'm struggling here. As a man, as a father, right, as a Singh, what do I do? Who do I go to, right? And there's loads of people out there like that are struggling, and you know, there's so many roadblocks in the way of them getting support in the first place.
But you work with an organisation or all organisations. Who are the organisations?
So Turkey, yeah. So actually, men's mental health trainer. So obviously, you know, I'm sure you know Sharanjit Baji and all the amazing work that he's done setting all that up over the years to where we are now, to where we're actually, you know, we are Punjabi men working with Punjabi men. So the support is tailor-made in that way to provide these spaces for Punjabi men like I was and how other people are at the moment. And it's a community-based model. Where, yes, there's so many interventions out there now, so many different therapies out there, and they're all great, okay? But we have that Sangat-led, community-based model where it's about coming into that space and we're all peers, yeah, where we learn from each other's experiences, journeys, and learnings ultimately, and we're all equal in that space. And like I said, you know, you could be at any point of your life as a Punjabi man coming into that space with fellow Punjabi men and maybe not even talking, just listening to what we're talking about and just kind of feeling a part of something. Because one of the biggest things why we started this project in the first place was tackling loneliness in men.
But that doesn't mean that you're alone. No. But you can be lonely, like you had a family, you had your wife, you had a kid, but you were still lonely, or there's something there. Yes. You know, there's that silent.
Yes, the silent battles every day that we go through. That who do we share that with? Who do we talk to about that? And that's it. That there are men that are isolated out there within their families. Where do they go? How do they even begin to take those steps? There was a problem out there, which is why we got the funding that we did to run what we're doing, the curriculum that we're doing at the moment to train people to become men's peer Punjabi men's peer facilitators. So we've got spaces now in Birmingham. Birmingham is thriving. Leeds, we've got Leicester, we've got Southall. We're in Vancouver now. We're in Australia. Where this is really, there's such a demand for this work.
Amazing. I think we can keep talking, and I wanted to touch on so many topics, but we will be welcoming you back again for some other conversations about other topics and other work that you do, specifically maybe mental health and stuff. But where can everyone find you, and how can they get in touch or reach out?
So mainly Sikh Dad on Instagram, and my website, which I'm sure you'll put in the details as well. But yeah, thank you. I feel grateful, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I think we just the topics we've had have been really interesting, and we can't wait to have you back again. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Please follow us on Sangat TV podcast. Make sure you do subscribe on our YouTube, Instagram and Facebook channels, and please make sure you do follow Sikh Dad as well. Thank you.